Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Media Mementos podcast. I'm here, and also this guy's here with me.
Hi, my name is, Phil. I've been glad to be a part of this Media Mementos podcast here. It's a nice one. Say, by the way, I have a question for you.
Yes?
What do you think of hot Cheetos? I've been wanting to ask you in the live streams.
I have no idea what you're talking about, sir. Well, this is Billy H.L. He's edited a few of the videos before and has appeared in the last podcast and many more in the future, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah. There's quite a lot.
Oh yeah, we got a doozy of one today, and let me tell you, I didn't think we were gonna get this one so soon. Every so often there's a review I'll do where I'm thinking, this is probably not gonna do very well. Not a lot of people are gonna watch it. No, probably little fanfare, but I want to do it, so I'm just gonna take the hit, and then next time we'll do something big and important. That's what I thought this one was gonna be. But no, it's doing pretty well for itself. Not the number one most, that's Ren and Stimpy Adult Party Cartoon, especially, given the news around Ren and Stimpy lately. But Meet the Feebles is the one for today. And boy, is this one, it's gonna be a bit of a contentious podcast because I myself love this film, and you, not so much.
I don't like it. I wouldn't say indifferent either. I'd say I genuinely have a dislike for it.
We were talking about this a little bit ago. We'll probably get into this a bit more later, but this is kind of basically the opinions we have on Meet the Feebles and the Haunted World of El Super Beasto, respectively, are swapped between us.
It was really weird of a discovery to make for sure. Like, I mean, I understood like why he didn't like Beasto beforehand, and I understand why he liked Feebles, and now I didn't think it'd actually come to this where we have a photo negative situation. It's crazy.
It really is. But first, I'm trying to pull up the name of the person that suggested this because, I gotta give him credit. Because that's kind of what you do on stuff like this, right?
No, you don't. Of course, you take all the credit.
It was me! Esteban Camacho, thank you very much for suggesting this, and I'm glad we get to talk about it because this is going to be special. So, first, I'm going to very briefly go through the review because basically, the extent of it was I don't know if I want to admit this or not, but I'm still subscribed to Animat. I kind of been watching less and less because he's been getting more and more political, and I don't come to animation videos to learn about politics. I go to work for that because that's what I do for work. Uh, and I'll admit I like a fair bit of his videos. It's just that I don't want to hear about that kind of stuff a lot. But then when he did the Happy Time Murders, that I'm like, okay, I don't care if he gets political with this or not. I gotta see this because all everyone ever does is talk about how much it sucks, but no one ever talks about why it sucks. And he did it, admittedly, in a pretty artistic way. A lot more artistic than the movie itself, let me tell you. And then he mentioned Meet the Feebles in there in the beginning. And I was thinking to myself, I've heard that name a lot before. I've heard some of my friends who are into kind of cult underground movies mention that every so often, but I've never really gone out of my way to watch it. So I reached out to this gentleman right here,
Yeah.
saying, "Hey, what do you think of it?" And he basically is like, "It's not great."
Nope.
Yeah. Then I was thinking, okay, so this is gonna be an El Super Beasto thing, right? I'm gonna watch it, and then I'm gonna say, yeah, it's just not for me. But no, that's not really what happened. Because the night I watched it, which was the same night actually, I stayed up till 2 in the morning watching it. I found out I really liked it. Probably a lot more than I should, and definitely more than I thought. I thought I was not gonna like it, but well, it's number 19 on my top 20 favorite movies list. If you've seen that, so
Proof that this film, I wouldn't say changed his life, but definitely made some kind of an intense impact.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I watched that very quickly, and then I saw it again and again, just trying to make sure I understood the thing, because the first time I watched it, I liked it, but didn't know why I liked it. Because I didn't laugh a ton the first time I was watching it. I just more found it interesting. And I knew right from the beginning I was going to want to review it, but I didn't know what in the world I was going to say. It almost seemed impossible, but then after watching it a few times, I was finally able to put my finger on it and realize what exactly I felt made this movie tick. And so that's what we're here to talk about today, and that's basically the extent of the review. No real big story behind it or any of that. It's just that. But now we get to the...
Oh.
What? Oh yeah, it was a long one. And it took me a while to record too. I had to shave off a lot of it in post. But you're not here to hear about that. You're here to hear about how much we don't agree on this thing.
Oh. It is pretty brutal, actually. Like, many arguments before this podcast brutal.
Yeah, but of course in a very friendly way, because we all know it's just it's a stinking movie. That's the whole important thing.
And on my end, kind of dumb one at that. So.
Yeah, it's who knows? Maybe if El Super Beasto gets picked for a podcast topic, then we can turn the tables.
It's an Echo Fighter situation, man.
I'm gonna be a lot nicer on Beasto though too, because I'll admit that movie's not for me, but. You know, we're not here to talk about Beasto, we're here to talk about Feebles.
Anyway.
So, let's get into... Well, people know what I think of it, I'm sure, because they've already seen my review, at least I hope. If you haven't, what are you doing here? You probably need to go watch that video first. So, for those of you who have seen it and know what I feel, let's start off with our guest here and see why you don't like it, and then we'll see what I have in response to that. Let's take a little bit of a look here.
Okay, so I'll start by how I discovered the film. So basically, it was kind of a fusion between looking at this one top 100 animated films list, and Feebles was for some reason at number 98 or 97. It might have been.
I wouldn't call it animated.
Well, I mean, all puppets for most people count as animated. Like, people label Dark Crystal or Team America as animated films, but they're mostly just... No, they're 100% puppets, so... I mean, I guess it counts for something.
I guess.
But anyway, with Feebles, then it didn't really catch my attention at first, and the picture of... Like, the picture they used was the frog Wynyard injecting himself with heroin. And it made me think that it was like some kind of Requiem for a Dream like kind of movie, but with frogs or puppets. And that alone, I think, would make a much better movie than what we got. But you know, that we'll go more on that later. But then I found out a little while later when I was looking up Peter Jackson's filmography, because when I started to look at other lengthy film credits for directors, Meet the Feebles stood out like a major sore thumb on my end. Even in his early credits, like Brain Dead or Bad Taste, which are his first horror movies, and so far the only ones he's done. And Feebles was like just smack dab in the middle as this weird ass puppet thing. And I took a look at it, couldn't really get it through the first time because I honestly fell asleep. And then saw it again, I think maybe a couple years later. This time I saw the whole thing, and I wasn't really a fan. I felt like I wasted my time. And then, another 2 years came by. You were talking about how, oh wow, this is a great movie. You should totally give it a second chance. And then I saw it again, and I still felt like I wasted my time.
By the way, killer impression of me. That's exactly how I sound.
Thank you. And this kind of made me question, like, again, in an opposite way of Trevor wondering, oh, why do I like the film so much? This time, I was like, why don't I like the movie that much? So, against my own, well, I wouldn't say against my will, but I forced myself to watch it again, and now I kind of have a better understanding of why. You see, I think it mainly stems from the story structure, or at least it's like one of the major factors. Because I do like it when movies like have this kind of disjointed structure, but only when done right. Films like Pulp Fiction and Trick or Treat, the latter of which being one of my favorite movies of all time, know how to approach it. They give off a fair warning, or at least an indication that none of these stories are going to be connected in a chronological way, or at least not in a consistent flow. But they still have decent transitions that move on to like what other character you're going to be seeing next on screen. Feebles doesn't do that at all. Basically, you see one character, like Robert and Lucille, just having one of their little moments, and then suddenly, whoosh, you go see Harry's doing it with a bunch of rabbits. Or then, then you gotta go to Heidi again. Oh, nope, it's back to Robert. Oh, nope, back to the fly. Oh, back to the walrus guy. Oh, back to the cat. Like, it really doesn't give you time to breathe. And for a film like this, I honestly think this is really bad. It's like if Boyhood was a comedy, and that is not a good thing, guys. That is not a good thing.
As much as I do like the disjointed structure of Feebles, because I do kind of like its initial premise. What it is basically a glimpse into the lives of pretty much some of the worst people imaginable. Jackson, upon its release, was saying it's basically... He didn't say Muppet, because he kept at first vehemently denying it was Muppet, but basically the puppet equivalent of taking a look at the seedy underbelly of the worst kind of people imaginable. And I kind of like that. And I do like what they were trying to go for. The one thing I will knock about that, though, is kind of what he was saying there, where it's just kind of breakneck. Oh, no, Wynyard now. Oh, no, now it's Abby sticking his head up his butt. I would prefer if it was something like, say, Saving Mr. Banks, where there's transitions, or it lets you know what's gonna happen next, where we're going. I do like most of the stories that Feebles has to tell. I've already been clear there's one or two I'm not too keen on, and we'll talk about that momentarily, I'm sure. Still, though, as much as I am interested in Heidi's dilemma, or I want to see Robert and Lucille get together, and I am excited when they come back, it is a bit jarring just how kind of not broken, I guess, but kind of cobbled together it seems. It really does kind of give off the impression of what it was originally supposed to be, where, this was going to be a TV show, and it kind of does feel like, at least pacing-wise, it feels like a TV show that is trying to get all of its plots out at once. And again, I enjoy that, but I do kind of wish maybe a little bit more refining happened to the stories, the way they're presented, if that kind of makes sense.
My end, have the characters, actually interact with each other. You don't see, Robert talk with Harry, or you don't see Heidi interact with Sid. You don't see those kinds of interactions. Very few, in fact, exist in the movie.
The only one I was disappointed not to see was Robert and Heidi, because Robert said Heidi was his favorite of the Feebles, and they never share a scene together until the massacre at the end. They never really interact. And I am a little disappointed on that, but aside from that, while I do think it would have been cool to see them all interact, I do think that would have probably interfered with the flow of the stories a bit, given the fact that, assuming that we're keeping all the stories that are being told in Meet the Feebles right now, we're not cutting them, I think it would make it a little more bloated if we had to, put in time for, say, Harry has to talk to the Fly now, or Sebastian and Bletch have more stuff together. I think it would have been a nice bonus, but it only wouldn't have been able to fit if we got rid of, admittedly, some of the weaker elements of the film, which, I'm gonna be honest, there are some. I don't think the porno scene is very funny. I will say, Meet the Feebles' weakest aspect is its comedy. I like this film. I know I'm being really critical. I'm just telling you guys, I really like it. But the comedy is the weakest part. And nothing in that porno scene made me laugh. I said it in the review, I'll say it again. If we stopped At the part where Robert's like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to intrude," and he leaves, that would have been fine. We would have gotten everything we needed out of the story and we could have progressed and then maybe had time for, again, more of those interactions, but no, we just have to have Dennis being Dennis, and then that's kind of about it. Or the fight scene at the end with Mr. Big and Cedric and his guys, which, real quick, I have no idea why on some of the foreign VHS and DVD covers, Cedric is the only character on the front cover. He's barely in the film.
Right, I forgot. Oh my god. I remember, like, you reminded me, because, like, I thought I was, like, hallucinating that some covers was just that really creepy shot of Cedric running towards the crew or something. And I'm like, what? Oh,
Yeah.
you brought it up. That is, because I think I might have seen that as like a Netflix cover or something at one point. Maybe.
I know it exists. I think it's the Australian copy. I don't know. Correct me if I'm wrong, and I'm pretty sure I am, but I know it's some international release, and I, for the life of me, don't know why you would. It's like if you came out with a DVD copy of, say, Return of the Jedi, and you made Wicket on the front cover. Like, why would you do that?
Actually, I want to see that.
Or like Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, and on the front cover was Crab and Goyle.
No, it's the spider.
Yeah, it's Aragog. Like, this isn't the lead, guys. It's a secondary character at best.
We could do this all day if we could.
Yeah, Coraline, the rats are on it, and that's it. Not even the mice, just the rats. Anyways, like, that scene, you don't really need it. And I think if you cut those two, and maybe the golf scene as well, if you cut those out, you would have had enough time for doing exactly what you wanted. Now, I will say, I thought the golf scene was amusing. Not one of the better ones, but I did enjoy the fight scene. I thought the choreography was pretty good, especially for such cheap puppets. And I really liked the design of Mr. Big and his crab minions. And, surprisingly, it keeps you on edge a little bit, but, again, what does it add to the film? Nothing. I do think that if they wanted to incorporate that, they could have maybe done it a little bit better, maybe have some more tie-ins to that, but again, we're kind of getting into the what-if territory, and we're kind of supposed to be focusing on what is, you know? And this is something, I think you brought this up, that the reason, basically, you're not able to find a lot of enjoyment in this, but I am, and the reason I can't find much enjoyment in Haunted World of El Superbeasto, and you are, is basically because we're different kind of film viewers, essentially. And I'm going to go with a comparison that makes it sound pretentious later, but first, because I know this was yours, can you explain that a little bit to the folks?
So basically, the kind of idea I came up with was that before we like even started, I feel like he's more of like one of the analytical viewers, basically having always like this interest in wanting to look deeper into a film, trying to find all of the little details and character traits and story elements and themes and underlying commentary, basically wanting to find as much to dissect from a film as possible.
Yep.
Well, I'm the kind of person, while I do enjoy analyzing things from time to time, in fact, I really do love artsy films, I still have a very great respect for movies that just simply want to have fun and be even just referential and like hella enjoyable for a bunch of people who are like fans of a specific genre. I'm not saying like parody movie levels of like, oh, we're just being stupid, you don't have to hate us for it. Like, not that kind of stuff. You get what I mean?
Yeah. And hey, I love some of those, like, kind of turn off your mind movies, too. Three Amigos is one of my favorites, after all. So is, like, UHF.
Yeah.
And like you said, you like artsy films, too, so it's not like we're mutually exclusive here.
Yeah, it's kind of like I have a bigger appreciation for, like, different types of movies, I think, like, in comparison to you, that, like, I sort of know what exactly I'm getting into with each kind of film. Like, if it's a more deep film, I'm gonna head on, try to see what all I can find in my first go-round. Maybe I'll be traumatized, maybe I won't. Like Black Swan was one I knew exactly was a deep film, and that already left me with a bunch of nightmares. And even comedy films like Dodgeball, that's one of my are also personally one of my favorites, but it's like one of those dumb little simple movies, but I love it because it's a simple movie that doesn't really need to have much like analysis towards it to really be enjoyable. And I think in hindsight too, that's kind of why I don't like Feebles, because it kind of has this idea going, like gives you this idea going in that maybe this is going to be one of those like dumb little comedy things with just a little bit of insightful commentary in there. But here it is, like the comedy clearly is an afterthought, and you have to like you are required to have like this intense mindset of looking deep into it head on. Which I mean, while I do find that a good mindset for something like say Donnie Darko, I don't think that's good for a comedy like this. Like, even with South Park, you don't have to like know head on to just analyze every little detail and get a better appreciation for it, because sometimes it may actually diminish your own pre-existing opinions. I know that happened with me with Feebles, even knowing like that, analyzing the details, I still kind of found myself more exhausted and kind of distasteful of the film than before.
See, that's another thing that shows kind of our different mindsets. Because for me, I was coming in expecting it to be basically a scary movie or epic movie level of comedy where it's ha ha ha, penis, ha ha ha, death, fart, privates, that kind of stuff. I was really scared it was going to be one of those, and I hate those. Because you know what, a lot of those things, they can be good sometimes, like Drawn Together, but I've said it before and I say it again, the shocking thing can't be the joke in and of itself. And that's why, you know, when Drawn Together got into its third season, that became the joke. It lost that edge of having more to it and just became exactly what it was stereotyped as, and admittedly what the first two episodes were, but that's a story for another day. So when Feebles had that other side to it, I actually found it as a pleasant surprise, because I was more than nervous about what I was gonna get. But then when I found out what it was, and you know, those things are right up my alley, I thought, you know, hey, free real estate. But this is actually something I was going to say. I don't want to seem too pretentious, and we're most certainly not on their level. But you know what group also has this same kind of dynamic of one of them really likes to be super analytical and the other one kind of likes to, I don't want to say turn the mind off, because that's not what it is. Yeah, Siskel and Ebert had that. Siskel was very, very analytical of all the kinds of films, and Roger Ebert was more just kind of there to have fun.
I did not think about that allegory. Holy crap.
I mean, that's what happened. That's exactly it, which is probably why it wasn't as interesting when Richard Roeper came on board, because Roeper felt the same way about movies as Ebert did. What made Siskel and Ebert so interesting was that they look at movies in different perspectives. Meanwhile, Richard Roeper, I mean, he's a cool guy, don't get me wrong, and he is a good critic, but he was a little too similar to Roger Ebert to kind of make the show work, you know?
Because he was, I wouldn't say discount Ebert, but he was definitely Ebert 2.0.
Yeah.
I do say he did a good job when it was just him all by himself. And I do kind of wish he stuck it out, but you know, sometimes network brass can be hard to deal with.
But this is just kind of a roundabout way of saying Feebles is such a niche film.
Like, look at us here. We agree on a lot of things. We have a lot of the same tastes for various things.
We definitely have a lot of similar opinions.
Yeah, like we both think Popeye 19... When did that come out again? 1980? We both think that's kind of a crazy, little bit of a fun ride with a lot of good throwbacks to the Fletcher's cartoons. Things like that. We view these things primarily the same, but, you know, every so often, you'll find that one thing that's so niche and so divisive, like Meet the Feebles or Haunted World of El Super Beasto, maybe even Baby Blues, although I will argue that it was never really great to begin with, just decent. A pleasant surprise.
I like the Nut Shack better, to be honest.
But it just shows you when there's something as divisive as this, it really depends on what way your mind is wired. I'm a critic by heart. I've always been that way. And I've always been someone who likes examining things, studying things, learning things. And that's exactly what Feebles provides. Underneath its kind of crazy layer of odd puppetry, bodily functions, and crazy references to who knows what, like the Vietnam War, there's a lot of kind of fascinating commentary to me, and that's mostly because that's the way my mind is wired. As I've said, even in the review, am I expecting everyone to feel this way about it? Absolutely not. If anything, I expect maybe a third of my audience to follow along with that, if that. Because it really just kind of depends on your certain preferences. And even then, the shocking material in there doesn't bother me, because again, I like the first two seasons of Drawn Together a lot. I like... Well, barring the first two episodes, those kind of sucked. But, I like things like Captain Hero's Marriage Pact, Captain Girl, Requiem for a Reality Show, or even South Park, or Futurama, even when that goes a bit nuts, and parts of Gary and His Demons.
There's a lot of those adult shows that do try to push the envelope.
That I do enjoy. So already, the kind of shocking, weird material didn't put me off. Therefore, because it didn't put me off, like I know it did for you, I was able to get more engrossed in the film and look at its underlying aspects. Meanwhile, someone who wouldn't like, say, Drawn Together, or I don't know, South Park. South Park's a bit more universal, it seems, but shows like those, like Drawn Together, like I was saying, or dang, I'm trying to think of another one that's actually good, but there's so few of them.
Nut Shack.
I'm kidding. No one likes that, man. You get what I'm saying. You kind of have to already be in that mindset, or train yourself to be in that mindset. Otherwise, you're gonna have a bad time.
Really good argument you have right there. But I guess on my part, because even then I wouldn't say it did kind of throw me off the first time, but mostly just to the extent of how boring it was and the puppetry being awful. So, but maybe even just the way it was handled in general, especially compared to the other early Jackson films like Bad Taste and Brain Dead. I don't know what it was. It just kind of seemed to be a lot weaker as a showcase of Peter Jackson's talents in comparison. Well, not in terms of the basic idea of a tragic storyline, because Jackson can do that very well, as evident in his future films like King Kong and Lord of the Rings. But you get what I mean.
Lord of the Rings is actually one of the worst films ever, because they didn't do the book exactly verbatim. I wanted to see all of it.
I love Lord of the Rings, actually. I didn't see it until a couple years ago because I was cursed. Every time I tried to watch it, the disc was scratched, or we got the Spanish version one time. That was crazy. But I finally watched it, and I loved it. It's still weird to think that guy made Meet the Feebles. One thing I do kind of have to say about Meet the Feebles, I don't see this as a bad thing because, again, in my view, I think it worked. It definitely is a film that tries to have its cake and eat it too, so to speak. It tries to be a comedy, but also a tragic drama. Now, as I've said before, Meet the Feebles' comedy is the weaker part of the film. While there are some good jokes, I believe, for every good one, there's also... Actually, I'd say for every two good ones, there's one that's not as good. Mainly the fly eating Harry's excrement. That one is the biggest one I can point to of, okay, that's not funny, that's just kind of there to be shocking. But there are some good jokes, like just how depressive Sid is, or Sebastian's crazy temper, Harry's vomit, again, but I've gone through that again. Again and again and again. I've been through that a lot. But it really is trying to be both things. And, I guess that's kind of this... What am I trying to say? The little bit of a showcase that Jackson was early in his career. That's what a lot of early filmmakers try to do.
I think in this case, he really was still trying to find his footing. And I think that, now that you bring that up, that might actually be why I really don't like the movie. It's clearly a product of a director who's still trying to refine their main vision. Peter Jackson is a very intense director. He always goes above and beyond with his films. You know, when he's not censoring stuff like in Lovely Bones, he he likes to go deep into his subject matter, and have like kind of a fusion of like tragedies and like kind of action elements and fantasy, but like stuff like Feebles here really was just a primitive take on like what we would expect from him in the future. And instead of looking at it like, cool, it's like him still finding his footing. Like we get to see some early indications. You could tell, or at least I could tell, this was clearly just him still experimenting. And because of all these flaws of a young director, like it's very, and to me it's very rare for a film director to nail it out of the park right away. Like the only person I can think of that did that was Tim Burton in Pee-wee's Big Adventure. But with Jackson, Brain Dead, as much as I love it, still is heavily flawed, in that it kind of just relied too much on, I guess, constant bloodshed to really be entertaining. And then with Feebles, he tried to add a story to that, and it kind of clashed with more of the humor of it. So it kind of weighed it down a little bit, in my opinion, so that he really didn't have a clear idea of what he was doing. And the whole TV show origin also doesn't really make it help either.
Now, see, that's kind of where I'll kind of argue against that. Now, I do definitely say, if this did come out later, if this, say, came a couple films after Brain Dead, I'd say, definitely before Lord of the Rings. Let's be clear about that. Because if this came out post Lord of the Rings, this would have like a $500 million budget, and there'd be CG everywhere, and it would only make like $2,000 at the box office, let's be real. But if this was a little later than it was, I think it would have been a little more refined. However, personally, I didn't see it so much as a clash as I just kind of saw it a natural element of the characters in the Feeble world, because, again, it's a character study movie. It's kind of what I've been saying makes a good show, is having strong characters. Things like, say, Drawn Together, The Simpsons, Dave the Barbarian. They're so strong characters, at least, you know, when they're being written correctly. What you can do is you can get any of them, just kind of random ones, throw them in a situation, and then the writing just happens because they're so fleshed out, I suppose. I don't want to say the Feebles cast is like Shakespeare levels of interesting and layered, because they're not. I don't think anything is, let's be honest, but you know, that's kind of something I feel stems from it. Feebles isn't really supposed to be much of a story, more just kind of a day in the life before something went terribly wrong, and we kind of understand the mindsets of some of these folks. Like, we kind of see Heidi, her whole world is basically this monstrous, awful man, and even if she's unhappy, which she very clearly is, we can see a lot in the film, she's so stuck in her own comfort zone that she's not willing to admit it or do anything about it. It's little things like that, and also, like what you were saying, that Jackson likes to be a deep director, kind of putting little subtle emotional things into where you wouldn't otherwise expect it. That's proof that, again, this is intentional. I've said that in the review, and I'll say it here again. It's not me overanalyzing it, that's just all there.
Yeah, it already is, but like, the point, I think the takeaway from this, not just for like either of us, but for others, is that like a film in hindsight can be very deep in itself, but the taste is still subjective. And as you can see here, there's definitely some very intense, like differing opinions, and really just shows how divisive your film can be. And honestly, my argument is, if your film heavily divides people in like whether or not you like it or not for what it does, like you like the film for what it does, I don't like it for what it does personally, but I think if your film has that effect, you're probably going to be more interesting to talk about and still be talked about to this day. You see, a lot of cult movies, they have a very divisive audience. And I, myself, love some cult movies, and I hate some to death. But, that just shows the power the film has. Like, what's the point of really talking about it more if it's universally loved or universally panned? Like, if if a film is like very divisive with a lot of people, it's more of an interesting topic to talk about, honestly.
Exactly, and that's actually why I don't go for some of the low-hanging fruit on Media Mementos. Like, Planet Sheen I'll get around to because I want to talk about why it sucks as a spin-off, because people don't talk about that. People talk about why it sucks as a show. See, it's things like that where if it's widely hated or widely loved, but you can put a new spin on it, then you can talk about it. But if it's basically saying, Psycho is this revolutionary, wonderful film that does this and this, how many people have said that this year alone? We all know about that. And Psycho is my favorite movie, too, so you better believe I would have loved to say something about that if I wasn't the 1,386th person to do it. But when it comes to things like Feebles, Drawn Together, Super Beasto, Popeye, there's such a divisive, you either love it or you hate it kind of mentality, and it kind of makes it more interesting. Now, I personally can't wait till we get to one where we both agree on it, where it's a really divisive thing where we both have the same mindset, but knowing how we kind of view things, we're definitely going to come to different conclusions about why we feel that way.
Yeah, again, it's subjective. Like, even people who may have the same opinions, they will have different reasons for having that.
Precisely. And another thing I just kind of want to say real quick is, again, if you don't like it, I totally understand. For me, I'm just the kind of guy that has to know everything about everything. So when you go into the film and you watch it, I don't expect you to give me like a full rundown of why the Sodomy song is like one of the best parts of the movie. Like, I kind of have that personal thing because, you know, the music makes it sound like a really intense moment, but the song is really stupid. But the song is balanced out with this horrible thing that's going on, but the music also makes it sound like it is something terrible that's happening, but they don't know about it, and it's a nice juxtaposition. It's, you know, that whole thing. I could go on and on talking about things like that with the Feebles, where it's little subtle things in the background, or little nice touches that a lot of people wouldn't expect, because that's what I do. My job, as in my professional career, not even doing things like Media Mementos, I'm talking about even in the real world, I'm supposed to analyze and look into things. That's what I do. I'm supposed to understand and learn new things all the time. So by my nature, that's what I do. So I don't expect everyone to do that. And, you know, again, I love films like UHF or Three Amigos where it's just for fun. But I can enjoy those because I know it's just for fun. I know it's not, oh, in UHF, George Newman's whole thing is an allegory for alcoholism and heroin addiction. Not that. So, again, when Feebles kind of surprised me with that, it was a pleasant surprise. Meanwhile, you know, we've been through that, but, you know, I'm just kind of trying to clear that up. So, I know a lot of people go and check out the stuff that I review after I recommend it. And I do absolutely recommend Feebles because whether you like it or not, I do think this thing needs more attention because we want to get that re-release out because those DVDs are just garbage.
And, you know,
but
if Feebles is on DVD, that means Heavenly Creatures is on DVD, so that makes me happy.
Yeah, but again, if you are going to check it out, keep an open mind, and don't try to force anything either. Don't try to force it to see it either his way or my way. Just experience it the way you feel naturally inclined, and then you'll find out which side of the camp you're on.
What we're trying to talk about here, and what we wanted to accomplish with this podcast in particular. It's okay to have differing opinions. You don't have to think a certain way about a certain film. It's all right to have these kind of pleasing arguments and very civil behaviors when discussing things like this, especially when it comes to entertainment. You could still have a similar appreciation for things, but still have very differing opinions as a result. And at the end of the day, isn't that kind of like what makes things more interesting in general, is because of how different a lot of us can be, especially towards movies like this?
Heck, that's what makes democracy so exciting. If we all had the same opinions on everything like North Korea, boy, this would be a pretty dull society.
Oh, yeah.
Although, There are a couple things I did say we were able to agree on real quick before we do anything kind of wrapping up about what made the film a little weaker, but I'm going to go out on a limb and say that there are two things that you'll agree with me that make the film at least good in some aspects. I mean, like I said, how I viewed it, you know what I said. So first off, the soundtrack of this film, you've gone on record saying you like.
The soundtrack is amazing. Oh my god, it's kind of hard to explain why it's so good, honestly, but the fact that, like, not only is it, like, very orchestral and disjointed, like, this sort of hybrid between a major epic film and urban, like, urban environment and, like, carny ride kind of fusion with the soundtrack just makes it so interesting and reflects of the disturbing nature of the whole thing so much.
Although, we do prefer the original soundtrack with the original pitch, because the version you're watching on YouTube is not the right one. They pitched up the audio for whatever reason.
If you look hard enough, you can find the original pitch on YouTube, but it's very recent.
And the coloring is all wrong.
Oh, it's the original coloring. No, it's not. Okay.
Yeah, no, that's not the original coloring. The trailers have... So it's weird. The trailers have the original visuals that we've seen in the pitched up audio, but it has the audio for the other... it's crazy. I'm hoping someone uploads a regular version, or, you know, better yet, we get it restored. And then the other thing, I'm hoping you agree at least, Robert and Lucille are a pretty adorable couple. You gotta admit that.
They are easily, like, the best, well, at least in my opinion, like, the one thing to really take away from the whole thing, honestly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you know, to each their own. And, of course, I feel like I have to say this real quick before we go, because it's gonna eat me alive if I don't. I know I was a little critical early on about the film, because, you know, it's not perfect. As much as I love it, it's not perfect. But maybe it's because I knew that it could be better, that I took it into my own hands to make it better. I think you know where I'm getting at.
Yeah. He has a script for a musical based on Feebles that actively not only looks to do the original film justice for the people who liked it, but also improve upon aspects such as the story and characterizations and approach to the whole structure in general, to the point that I myself have personally, like, believed that this is a much better version of the movie.
Now that's a high honor.
Especially since I don't like it, like the movie.
And I really like the movie, so, you know, that's a high mark of praise, but... So I was bored one week working from home, because this is before we went back to work, you know, with masks and whatnot, because there's a little bit of a sickness going around. I don't know if you've heard of it. But I just decided, you know what? Let's see if I can really put my money where my mouth is, and I did it. I might release it someday, who knows, if there's enough fanfare behind it, or if the people want to see it, but... Hey, this guy who doesn't like the film says he likes it, so you know it has to be at least 2 out of 10 stars.
No, it's like a 10 out of 10 on my end.
Well, hey there!
Can't go wrong with that endorsement. I gotta say, I had a lot of fun writing that, and I guess it just goes to show how much I liked the movie, because I sent you the message when it was done, like, I'm kinda upset now I don't get to write for Feebles anymore. Before we go, is there anything you want to say to the audience?
Well, I think, again, a takeaway from this is what we wanted to prove, especially if you have friends that like a certain thing that you don't. Don't be afraid to say that you don't like it. You could tell them, hey, it's just not my thing. And you guys can come to a good agreement, having a decent argument that's not too hostile, and in the end you'll even find things that you may agree that you like or dislike about it. As shown with Feebles here. And even early before that, even though I didn't think about it, El Super Bisto, which hopefully, if someone pays the money and asks the right questions, we can actually talk about that in a future podcast.
Mm-hmm, because podcasts are suggested by the Patreon raffle winners, and You know, if you ever want to hear the tables turning, me go, I just don't get this, man! Like, that's basically going to be the whole thing where I'm like, this movie isn't for me, so why did I watch it? It's going to be crazy.
If you want me to talk more about horror, again, like, basically that whole tangent in Beasto, but like 90% of the video with Trevor going, what's going on? Then yeah, you can suggest that.
Yeah. And hey, stemming off what he said, you know, if just anyone disagrees with you on any stuff like that, it doesn't even have to be about media or entertainment. Just try to find some common ground or listen to them. Could be things about, like, more serious, like foreign policy or economic concerns. You might find some new ideas or at least understand where the other person's coming from. Cause
to have another perspective in order to strengthen your opinions. Or maybe change your opinions in general. Who knows?
I can tell you, getting a new opinion actually was able to help me finally fully commit to liking the Popeye movie, because, you know, before I talked to him, I just thought it was the weirdest freaking thing I've ever seen, but, yeah, I don't know, I was talking to him a little bit about it and kind of understanding where he was coming from. I gave it another shot, and yeah, I can say I liked it, and that's where I came from in the review of Popeye 1980 is Weird, where, I mean, we will be honest, that movie is freakishly bizarre, but it's a good freakishly bizarre, you know?
That's kind of freakishly weird in my opinion.
So, just remember, folks, be civil, give new things a chance, and if you got one leg missing, you can't get around.